Good evening, RENEWS English section is on air. I'm Sona Tumanyan. Let me start with breaking news out of Armenia. The leader of the recent anti-government movement, Archbishop Bagrat Hayastanian, has been arrested and ordered held for 2 months. He faces serious charges, including preparing acts of terrorism and inciting mass riots. The crackdown is widening, with courts also approving the arrests of several of the Archbishop's key aides and supporters. Our next stop is about a war of words that has erupted online involving the country's top leadership. The affair began yesterday when the Prime Minister's wife, Anna Hakopian, made a public Facebook post directed at Armenia's first president, Levon Ter-Petrosyan. Her comments followed a high-profile meeting between Ter-Petrosyan and the head of the Armenian Apostolic Church, Karagin II. But today, the conflict intensified dramatically when the Prime Minister himself posted on Facebook. What right does the group that violated the vow of celibacy and betrayed Jesus Christ have to speak of justice and credibility? That group has no right to speak on behalf of the Mother See. The Catholics who desecrated the Mother See must leave the pontifical residence. If it does not leave voluntarily, the faithful flock of the Armenian Apostolic Holy Church will remove him in a Christian way. The pontifical residence for the vulnerable. And the next post, Nikol Pashinyan singled out Levon Ter-Petrosyan and provided an characterization of the first president with his own commentary. He hates people, he treats everyone in his circle who has any glimmer of charisma with disgust. He feels happy in an environment of faceless, spineless, useless, semi-literate people, and in the words of Vanos Hiradarian, people who have read much but understood little. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Alen Simonyan, has also given an interview to the public television company of Armenia, speaking about yesterday's events. Let's watch a segment.
Simultaneously with the hearings, those actions must be carried out. We, by law, if the opposition parties submit enough signatures, we have no opportunity not to hold those hearings, and many such hearings have taken place. Now, it's interesting which deputies were going to sign to organize those hearings, and in fact, if the accusation that was presented today is finally proven, they would have actually committed a crime. And you use the word revolution, I can say that it was a preparation for a terrorist act, and in no way could we differentiate it from October 27. It was a case of being saved from a new October 27.
Alongside the arrests, a plan to nationalize Armenia's electric networks has captured the attention of the Armenian public. During today's cabinet meeting, Prime Minister Pashinyan addressed the topic in detail. Incidentally, just days ago, the Prime Minister had made a post stating that the plan for nationalization is already complete. Let's watch a segment from the government session.
Towards
the efficiency of the company's management, which must be implemented quickly and effectively. Of course, we have discussed the issue at a political level. It was discussed at the board meeting of the Civil Contract Party. I know that the Civil Contract faction of the National Assembly has also had discussions, and including with the government's partners, through our joint work, a draft law has already been submitted for amendment. It is included in today's agenda, and in an extraordinary session, the relevant legislative changes will be implemented, and very quickly, I think that first necessary action will take place. This means that the state, the government, will take over the management of the energy networks of Armenia, and from that point on, under calmer conditions, we will discuss future scenarios, what scenario we will follow. But I want to address one more strategic issue. Regardless of which scenario we follow, at some point X, we must ensure the possibility of a free subscription to the shares of the electric networks of Armenia closed joint stock company. Moreover, also taking into account our experience during this process, we must obtain such guarantees that the citizens of Armenia, not just, or at least not only companies, not only corporations, but also citizens, have the opportunity to invest their savings, that is, to acquire shares.
We will continue to follow the domestic political developments, but for now, a brief turn to Armenia's foreign ministry. Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan is in China on an official official visit, where he has already held a discussion at the China Institute of International Studies. Minister Mirzoyan presented the priorities of Armenia's foreign policy and the dynamic work being carried out to implement them. Addressing the bilateral relationship between Armenia and China, Mirzoyan noted that the Armenian government's readiness to elevate cooperation with China to a new level. Armenia's deputy foreign minister has sent a clear message about the country's readiness to finalize a peace agreement with Azerbaijan. Speaking with reporters, the official stressed that the location is not an obstacle and highlighted what he described as a constructive role being played by Turkey. Here is the deputy minister's full statement. There are tens of thousands of cities in the world. In any one of them, Armenia is ready to sign the document of normalization of relations with Azerbaijan. For us, the process of signing the document is the priority. The Turkish side, at least in the last year, has sent quite positive public signals to Armenia and Azerbaijan that they are interested in the normalization of relations between these two sides and the signing of the corresponding document. We are turning now to the Middle East, where a relative peace in the direct conflict between Iran and Israel is shifting the focus intensely back to the Gaza Strip. Israel has intensified its strikes across Gaza, killing at least 80 people and hitting residential buildings, according to Palestinian health officials. Simultaneously, a humanitarian crisis is deepening as Israel continues to severely restrict the entry of essential aid like food and medicine, citing security concerns. The combination of military action and aid blockades is creating a dire situation for civilians.
Intense military operations have taken place in Gaza in the last 24 hours. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reports at least 90 dead and about 200 wounded after the Israeli attack. These shocking footages released by Al Jazeera show that there are also women and children among the victims. The IDF has stated that its targets are Hamas military facilities. The Israeli side claims that the purpose of these operations is to put pressure on Hamas to release their hostages. The main strikes were concentrated in the Shujaiya neighborhood of Gaza City, in refugee camps, and in the vicinity of the border town of Rafah. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is extremely dire. Hospitals are overcrowded, and there is a shortage of medicine, fuel, and medical supplies.
The health and humanitarian situation in Gaza is catastrophic. Medical supplies are not being imported due to the occupation. Hospitals will not be able to continue their work for a long time in such a serious crisis.
There is a real threat of famine in Gaza, warns the UN World Food Program. Israel has restricted the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The US and the European Union are calling for a ceasefire. The UN Secretary General has condemned the civilian casualties and demanded that international humanitarian law be respected. Experts believe that despite diplomatic efforts, the prospect of a peaceful settlement remains uncertain. Incidentally, Israel has also targeted Christian villages adjacent to the West Bank city of Ramallah, burning houses and cars.
A new chapter, President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky. After we noted their distant standing in the NATO family portrait, we're now getting starkly conflicting accounts of their private meeting, raising a simple question. Who is lying, Trump or Zelensky? First, President Zelensky's version had described their 50-minute private meeting in The Hague as substantive and positive. Shortly after, he posted, "I had a long and meaningful meeting with President Trump. We discussed how to achieve a ceasefire and real peace." But the US former president's account posted online was the complete opposite. Trump flatly denied any such discussion took place. He wrote, "I did not discuss a ceasefire with Zelensky, I just wanted to see how he was going." He also noted that the meeting could not have been better, and following that meeting with Zelensky, the head of the White House confirmed his plans, informing reporters that he intends to have a phone call with President of Russia in the near future. Ukraine has new successes as well. Denmark will become the first country with which Ukraine will launch joint defense production.
We count on your presidency in EU. Thank you very much. Here, with co-production, we are very ready.
And another big news, or not so big. In a major step toward accountability, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Council of Europe Secretary General Ellen Barset have signed an agreement in Strasbourg to create a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. The tribunal's goal is to hold Russia's top leadership accountable for what the document calls countless war crimes. This move aims to close a legal gap as existing international courts like the ICC in The Hague do not have the jurisdiction to prosecute Russian leaders for this specific crime. Justice for Ukraine cannot wait, Barset declared before the signing. President Trump also did not bypass question about Vladimir Putin. At a press conference in The Hague, when asked if Putin might have territorial ambitions beyond Ukraine, Trump answered simply, that is possible. However, he also suggested that he believes Putin is actually looking for a way out of the conflict. I think he is confused, Trump remarked. He added that he maintains constant contact with Moscow and that when Putin recently offered to help in the Middle East, Trump told him he must first resolve his own problems. He concluded by admitting that achieving peace in Ukraine is more complicated than he thought and that President Putin is even more complicated. We often find ourselves starting the broadcast by discussing posts from Donald Trump, but tonight it's the sheer volume of his online activity that's drawing criticism from a major world leader. The president of Brazil has publicly called out Donald Trump, taking aim at what he described as the former president's excessive activity on the internet and his populism. According to the Brazilian leader, the head of a country the size of the United States should be focused on substantial issues like international policy, free trade, and establishing peace rather than constantly trying to land in the media headlines.
In this troubled world, a world where you have a president of a nation the size of the United States who should prioritize their speech, should think about what they say, should be less on the internet and be more ahead of state, should think more about free trade, should think more about multilateralism, should think much more about peace. What do we see every single day in the press? The need for a miserable headline. We have had such presidents, and you know that we have. In other words, the least important thing is the truth. The least important thing is the country's interests. The most important thing is hidden, petty interests.
The diplomatic fallout is widening tonight, with sharp criticism now being leveled at the Secretary General of NATO. The spokesperson for Iran's Foreign Ministry, Esmail Baghai, has issued a harsh condemnation directly targeting the head of the military alliance. In a strongly worded statement, the spokesperson declared, and I'm quoting here, "It is shameful and irresponsible for the NATO Secretary General to congratulate the blatant act of aggression against an independent state. Whoever supports the crime is an accomplice." And one particular comment from the NATO summit is already getting significant attention from the press, the word daddy. And can you guess who it was aimed at? NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, while commenting on President Trump's statements regarding Iran and Israel, referred to the former US president as daddy. He then added, and this is a direct quote, "And sometimes daddy has to be tough." And now, the original video.
They're not going to be fighting each other. They've had it. They've had a big fight, like two kids in a schoolyard. You know, they fight like hell. You can't stop them. Let them fight for about 2-3 minutes. Then it's easier to stop them.
And then daddy has to sometimes use strong language to
You have to use strong language. Every once in a while you have to use a certain word.
As the NATO summit in The Hague concludes, leaders have adopted a joint declaration with several key commitments. Here are the main points. New spending target. Allies have committed to spending 5% of their GDP on defense by 2035. This will be split between 3.5% for core defense needs and 1.5% for protecting critical infrastructure. Ukrainian aid. In a major policy shift, the declaration confirms that direct financial contributions to Ukraine's defense and its defense industry will not count toward meeting these national spending targets. And future summit. It was also announced that the 2026 NATO summit will be hosted by Turkey. And a special flight from Russia has landed in New York. As of now, there is no official information on who was aboard the aircraft or the purpose of their arrival in the United States. However, what's raising eyebrows is the aircraft itself, an Ilyushin L-196 belonging to the Russia Special Flight Squadron. This is the fleet typically reserved for high-level diplomatic missions and transporting top Russian officials, fueling theories about potential secret back-channel communications. A new disaster to report tonight, this time unfolding in the city of Love. A powerful storm is battering Paris, leading to tragic consequences. At least 2 deaths have been confirmed due to the raging elements. In one heartbreaking incident, a 12-year-old boy died after falling into a swollen stream. In a separate event, a man who was killed when a tree collapsed onto his SUV while he was driving. The chaos extends across the French capital. Parisian media outlets report that it's not just streets that are inundated. Metro stations are also flooded, crippling public transport. Furthermore, more than 100,000 homes have been left without electricity as the storm continues to cause widespread damage. For more updates, follow us on YouTube, Telegram, Instagram, X, and Facebook. Daily news and full coverage are available on our official website. I am Sona Tumanyan. Stay informed with RENEWS.